Hey everyone, it's Joanna here from Inspired by Stamping, and today I'm going to share with you a wet on wet watercolor tutorial. This is a fun and easy watercolor tutorial. We're going to be concentrating on the leaves today. I've already cut all the cardstock out to make it quick and easy. I'll have all these dimensions on my blog. I'm using some Arches cold press watercolor paper today, and here is some hot press. And if you can just see in my video, the back one is the cold press, and see how much rougher it is. The hot press is very smooth, and that's because we're going to be using a lot of water, and that rough edges will absorb a lot of that water for us, and that's what we're really going for. So today I'm featuring our Garden Roses stamp set and also our UR, and I'll have those both available on my blog as well. I've already got them ready, and I'm using some antique linen distress ink. It's my absolute favorite distressed ink for no line watercoloring tutorials or any form of coloring at all. And I'm just going to stamp this over to the side on the edge here and just press down real firmly, making sure that it's evenly spread out. And you can see it's very light. That's what I really love about this antique linen. And so let's just get this out of the way, and then I'm using a Pentel watercoloring brush. It's got water already in it, and I just love it. They're very cheap and affordable, and you don't have to go and get a very expensive watercolor brush to create beautiful images either. I just bought this watercolor palette. It's my new travel one, and it's got all my watercolorings in it, colors in it, and it's just lovely. You could take it with you wherever I go, and I absolutely love it. It's plastic. It's just nice and easy and portable. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but not too quickly here so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get some water at the edge of that tip there to get the brush flowing with some water in it. And I'm just getting this little leaf really wet. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drop some watercolor in the beautiful green here, and you can see how it just spreads around naturally. And we're going to take the brush and just kind of apply that first layer there. And just move it around. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just make sure that your lines are going in the direction that you really would like that leaf to be showing. You really just want to make sure that that is just perfect. So here I am. I just picked up a little bit more paint, and now we're just going to go where I really think that it's going to start getting darker, and we're just going to continuously apply over and over. It naturally blooms because the leaf is very nice and juicy wet, and you can see how it just naturally blooms out, and it just spreads so evenly and perfectly. The key here is making sure that you're dabbing. I can't really tell that I am, but I'm just kind of dabbing and putting it in the direction of form. So which direction that leaf is going in, that's the direction that my brushes are going in as well. And you can really start seeing the shading coming to life here. So I'm working on this edge here, and I'm going fairly quickly because it is drying as I'm working on it, and I really do want to make sure that it is nice and wet and that it doesn't dry, because if it dries, then we're going to have to start all over again, and it kind of gets a bit frustrating. So here I'm just applying a nice dark edge here, and it naturally still is blooming because my leaf is wet. So now I'm going to just kind of add a little bit more of a medium shade. I didn't really like how light it was, so I just wanted to add a little bit more color. And watercoloring is all about layers and layers and layers. So if you don't like the consistency or how light it is, add another layer on top of it. Watercoloring is very beautiful and very easy to work with. And so what I'm doing here is just kind of going over the entire leaf, because I just wanted to make sure that everything is, there's no lines and everything is blending in perfectly. So here I'm going over again just with a little bit of the water, and I still had some green on my tip of my brush, and that's okay. Don't have to really be too particular about it. You're putting your first layer down, so it's really lovely. Just making sure that you're going in the direction of your leaf form and not going up and down where you really want to go, you know, sideways like that, going from the tip to the base of that leaf. So here it is again, just dropping in some more of that color. I just really need to work a little bit quicker here so that it blooms naturally. That's really the key here, is making sure it's nice and wet so it does bloom, and then just continuously dropping in a little bit of color. And you can start seeing those three colors just really starting to pop here, and just keep picking up some paint and continuously adding a little bit of color here, and look how beautiful that is, just really starting to come along. Now again, I'm wiping off that tip. Now I'm just going to naturally color the entire, blend it all in together. And you can just see it's really quick and easy. It's really not that difficult, and it's just so much fun. I really love Arches cold press paper. it really takes all the work out. It just does it naturally. And my favorite watercolor paints are Winsor and Newton paints. They are my absolute favorite. Okay, so now I'm working on my last leaf here. And again, just adding a lot of water on that first layer here and then dropping in that color again and just it naturally spreading out on its own. And I'm really not having to work too hard to make it blend in itself. It does it naturally, which is just fabulous. And then again, just continuously picking up a little bit more paint and dropping it in where I think it needs to be a little bit darker. And again, just keep playing and dropping in more color until you find that consistency of how dark you really want it. And it just naturally blooms and it's just a beautiful color. So here I am just kind of working on that stem, adding a nice deep dark layer right there along the edge. Now I'm going back through. I wiped my brush off here on that paper towel, and now I just went through and naturally it just spread and blended it all together. You don't want the layers to dry because then you'll create a hard edge between each layer, and that's a problem. So we really want to make sure that everything is wet. And that's really the key here. It's nice and wet when you drop in those colors because it blooms so beautifully natural and you don't have to fuss too much and work with your brush. Sometimes it gets really frustrating because when it dries, it takes a little bit more work to really kind of scrub the ink or the watercolor and move it around. And so we really want to prevent that from happening so you don't have any hard lines here. So I just wiped off my watercolor brush again and now I'm just blending it all in again. And again, I'm just going to kind of pick up a little bit more and go a little bit darker here and create that line like so. And you can really start to see how beautiful that's coming along. Really nice and dark on one side and a little bit lighter on the other side. And you can see that contrast of where we would say that the light is shining and the other side where it's a little bit darker. Now I'm just going to add a little bit dark here along this edge, just make it a little bit richer, and I really can just start seeing it come to life. Now we're going to work on these little leaves underneath the rose, and it's just the same technique. We're going to put our light color down, and we're just going to add lots and lots of water here, making sure that it's nice and wet. And I'm actually going to work with both leaves under here because they are quite small, and we can do a double tag here and get it really done a little bit quicker. Making sure that when you're painting, it's such a key with watercolors that you don't touch wet on the edges. So if two leaves are touching each other or the stem or the leaf is touching each other, you really want to make sure that that is completely dry or you will have quite a little disaster going on. And you'll see that I do that with the petals of the rose here. I don't allow two sides to touch each other because you'll have them blending into each other and then you won't have the beautiful shading that we're going for. And again, I'm just adding a little bit of darker again as I did with the leaves and just keep adding that color until you find your perfect consistency. Now I'm wiping off my brush and I'm just going to blend them in completely and making sure that everything is working beautifully together. Now I'm just going to focus on that one last leaf. There's one more leaf tucked behind that stem, and that stem's nice and completely dry now, and that's why I didn't do it right away, is because what I was just mentioning, having the two of them bloom together and create a little disaster for me. So that stem should be completely dry by now. And that is just really the key. The way to test to see if your watercolor is dry is just to use the back of your hand. Never use your fingertip because you have oils on your fingers at tips, and so your back of your hand is a bit more cleaner with less oil on it, and you won't have to worry about leaving an imprint or creating a glossy kind of smudge. So I'm just continuously dropping in that color again, wiping off my watercolor brush now, and just blending it in beautifully. And all three colors, you can see how they're just perfectly blended. And so there it is. There we have our beautiful leaves, and they just look beautiful here. So I'm going to really fast forward here and share how I colored my roses. I'm not going to be really focusing on how to do this with you guys. This is just the same technique really here. Just keep coloring over and over again, dropping in a little bit more color. And you can see here I'm making sure that both the watercolor petals are not touching each other, because then we would have them blooming into each other, and we don't want that. So we're making sure that they're not touching each other. And now I'm just dropping in some color again. And it's the same technique as the leaves, but I thought you guys would like to see the whole entire card being created. It's just the same technique. Okay, so I'm just going to play a little bit of music here and let you guys watch how I colored the rose petals, and I'll be back in a little bit and we'll put this card together. Okay, so I hope that you've really enjoyed watching me color this rose. It's such a fun stamp set to color, and you can use just so many different colors for your rose petals. And here I am using the yellow one. I absolutely love it. So let's put together our card. I'm using my mini Misty here, and I'm using the UR stamp set, and I'm going to just line it up perfectly. I'm using some VersaFine here, and with the Arches cold press paper, as I mentioned earlier, it is a bit bumpy, so we're definitely going to have to do some double stamping here. So I'm just going to stamp this twice, and it just brings it out just a little bit more, and it's just the black just is so much more vibrant when you do double stamping like that on with your Misty. And I'm just going to use a different sentiment here than my yellow card, and this time I'm going to be using Worth It. The first one I used Radiant, and so again I'm just going to line that up just where I want it, just perfectly. The reason why I don't stamp it with two stamps at the same time is I really enjoy having the sentiments a bit closer, and sometimes there's an outline around the stamps sets themselves that doesn't allow you to do that. So I'm just going to move this mini Misty over to the side here and grab our cardstock. Again, I have all the dimensions on my blog, so you can know exactly what to use and get your paper ready to follow along with this tutorial. And oops, I just didn't line that up perfectly, and I really want to make sure that I'm doing that. And then we're just going to flip this over, and now that everything's perfectly dry, make sure that that ink is nice and dry. You might have to use your heat embossing tool to make sure that that's nice and dry, because it is watercolor paper. It will take a little bit longer for your ink to set. Now I'm just using some Stardust Ranger stickles, and I just absolutely love them. They just make the cutest little glitter dots ever. So I'm just going to place them randomly here and there. And so here you go. I have the card all done here, and it's just nice and quick and easy, and a nice close-up. You could use purple roses, pink, blue, all the colors are just endless here. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's tutorial, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me or write me. I'm always here to help, and if you have a hard time with something, let me know. I'm here to help you. But I really hope that you enjoyed today's tutorial. Thanks so much.